I'm sure your surf background informs you on all of this, but when you're shooting, say, in the ocean, how do you how I'm trying to get into your brain a little bit. How do you read the wave to know, are you just framing everything and shooting as much as you can? But I'm sure your instincts are saying, okay, this moment's about to happen. I need to get tighter. I need to go wider. How does that work? Or can you even explain that? Is it just intuitive, or do you have a process for that?
I would really love to be able to press rec, and keep the camera rolling for hours. That would be so much easier. So some people like to shoot in the water with a zoom lens, and they can change the focal range, along the day. I like to shoot with a prime lens.
Really?
Yeah, first because it's lighter most of the time, than having a zoom. And also because it forced me to move, whether I'm swimming or whether I'm on the ski, not to stay in one position, playing with the zoom, like it literally like push me, to adapt depending on the condition and adapt of the wave, So it keeps me more sharp, if I may say.
Welcome to the Filmmaker Mixer Podcast, the podcast by filmmakers for filmmakers. My name is Andrew, and I'm joined alongside my co-host Jeff, as always. Jeff and I are writers and directors and passionate about the art of storytelling. Filmmaker Mixer is a creative hub where aspiring and established filmmakers come together to share experiences, insights, strategies, and inspiration.
Hello, everybody. This is the Filmmaker Mixer podcast, and today we are chatting with Vincent Kardasik, the three-time Emmy Award-winning cinematographer and producer behind HBO's 100-Foot Wave and numerous other projects. So, Vincent, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to chat, and I'm here in Austin, Texas, and you're what, south of France? Where are you at right now?
Yeah, I'm in the southwest of France, in a town in my hometown named Osogor.
Oh, very
It's just
nice.
on the Atlantic coast, It's pretty famous for surfing, actually.
Nice, nice. Well, let's talk 100-foot wave. I want to dive right in because you're filming in places where the ocean is unpredictable and violent and unforgiving. I don't think most people recognize that, cinematographers on a show like that are taking a lot of risks. So I'm curious how you approach a job like that in terms of getting what you need as a cinematographer, but also preparing for such a crazy environment to shoot in. What is that like, the setup?
So it's actually pretty different for myself and for the rest of my team, to be honest, because we have such a solid background in surfing. I've been a cinematographer for more than 20 years now, and I've been a surfer for more than 30 years. Some of our crew members used to be professional surfer also. So everybody has a knowledge of surfing, everybody has a knowledge of the ocean. So of course, there's always that risk level approach, we know like whether we're like on the boat in the middle of the ocean, shooting Cortez Bank, like in the episode 3 of the show, or for our water team, our water unit being like straight in the ocean, shooting those giant waves in Nazaré, or even on the cliff in Nazaré, really close to the action. There's a risk, there's always a risk, but that's something we've been dealing with not forever, but almost. Um, it's funny, like for all of us, it's not like the most complicated part of the job, to be honest. So
Really?
yeah, that was something in our DNA, safety, and risk assessment, and just trying to minimize, all the aspect of like what can happen to you, in the ocean or around the ocean or on giant wave. That's something we used to do, whatever the production we've been working for. So when it comes to 100-foot wave, it's of course one other level. The show is bigger. We have like more operators involved, more talents to shoot, but it's almost like I would say business as usual, in total honesty.
Well, any specialty equipment you have to use for a shoot like that?
Um, so basically, when it comes to shooting in the water, we use digital cinema cameras. We put in custom-made water housing. They're like more compact than the diving housing you can find on some production when it comes to shooting underwater. So they're lighter. It's easier to operate from the water because we're not really underwater. We're always shooting like, let's say split level or shooting at the back of a jet ski. And basically those housing are like made out of aluminum. They're super resistant. We can control pretty much on the camera from the exposure, the aperture, the white balance. We can also change format and frame rate if needed. And of course we can control focus, and that's something we do manually by yourself. There's no remote operation in the middle of the ocean. And when it comes to shooting from land, it's usually like a classic digital cinema camera with a huge telephoto. The longer the range you have, the easier it is to be closer to the action. And probably the most interesting part of our kit is the what the Cinema Verite crew is using, because basically Cinema Verite is the core of 100 Foot Wave. It's being like close to our talents, following them on a daily basis, from dusk till dawn. And also like not only when they're surfing, but outside of it, to show how their passion for big wave impact their daily life and their partners and their family. And those camera package are pretty interesting because basically we're like operating as a one-man band, We have to take care of framing, exposure, focus, audio. We have to be ready for everything because sometimes we start shooting at 4:35 in the morning, and those days are like endless. So you have to have a bunch of batteries with you. That's something I say, and people think it's a joke, but it really happened. Like it happened to us to start shooting early in the morning in Portugal and finish the day, like in a different country just because surfers are always chasing waves. So basically, you know where you're gonna wake up. You have no idea where you're gonna sleep in the evening. So you have to be ready for everything. And all over those 3 seasons of a 100 Foot Wave, we managed to reduce our camera package without doing any compromise when it's come to quality. So we're basically like all of us shooting in 6K or a 4K extraction, and we have like a really good audio. I mean, like the best audio we can do, when operating by ourselves. And we always try to improve our framing, our exposure, playing on the latitude of our sensors, or even on the way we're going to frame at some point, depending on the challenge we have during the day. Sometimes we have like beautiful sunny day next to the ocean. Sometimes we spend hours stuck in a warehouse. And that's a constant challenge, to try to improve something which was pretty good already in season one and try to make it better while following more and more characters and being closer to the action.
So I'm trying to get a handle on what this footprint looks like. So you're really a one-man band. You're not, I mean, each operator, you don't have like a focus puller or anything like that.
No.
Interesting. And how
No.
many camera operators on a given day?
So our team for season three, our team was made by 6 full-time camera operators, including the water unit. On top of that, we had 2 drones operator and a bunch of part-time camera shooters who can jump in every time we need like assistance. It can be when a massive swell is coming to Nazare, or if some of those big wave contests are happening, or even if at some point like part of the team is in Ireland, the other one is in Portugal, and the rest of the team is in Hawaii. There may be something happening like in between, and we need someone to jump in. So we're lucky also to be able to have a bunch of collaborators who can jump in at the last minute.
So I'm curious about something. I'm sure your surf background informs you on all of this, but when you're shooting, say, in the ocean, how do you how I'm trying to get into your brain a little bit. How do you read the wave to know? Are you just framing everything and shooting as much as you can? But I'm sure your instincts are saying, okay, this moment's about to happen. I need to get tighter. I need to go wider. How does that work? Or can you even explain that? Is it just intuitive, or do you have a process for that?
I would really love to be able to press rec, and keep the camera rolling for hours. That would be so much easier. But no, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. It, of course, it depends of the wave and of the nature of the wave. The wave can be like really long, and if you're shooting from the water, like it's going to be like a really long ride. So, from the water, you cannot capture it all. So you try to be at what seems the most cinematic spot of the wave, where like it looks like probably the more hollow, the more dramatic, and you're going to focus on that part and say on a really long wave, probably shoot like a quarter of it, hoping you're at the right spot and hoping it's like where the best action is going to happen. when it's a huge wave like Nazare, you want to be as close as possible of the impact of the wave because it's where like it gets the bigger and your job is to make it look big, you know. You don't want anyone to look at your shot and say, oh, actually, you know, it doesn't look that big from the water. That's the opposite you're looking for. So you're usually at the bottom of the wave trying to get like that huge leap, you know, forming like something really dramatic and having that feeling, you know, like the wave is going to eat up the surfer. So you have to adapt. Most of the time, some people like to shoot in the water with a zoom lens, and you know they can change the focal range, you know, along the day. I like to shoot with a prime lens.
Really?
Yeah, first because it's lighter most of the time, you know, than having a zoom. And also because it forced me to move, you know, whether I'm swimming or whether I'm on the ski, you know, not to stay in one position, you know, playing with the zoom, you know, like it literally like push me, you know, to adapt depending on the condition and adapt of the wave, you know. So it keeps me more sharp, if I may say,
Right.
because sometimes you spend like a full day in the water, you know, and at some point between like dodging wave, dodging surfer, you know, like checking your exposure, you know, you might become like a little lazy when it comes to framing. And I think when shooting with a prime lens, you know, you always have like to be focused on your framing. You know, that should be your priority, and the rest come later. And depending on the waves we're shooting, we have those picture in mind, you know, from based, as you said, on our surfing background, you know, what we see from the water, and usually people can see from the land. So we're trying to recreate that. But where it's funny in 100 Foot Wave is Chris, our director, has like a different approach because he's not a surfer, but he's been really digging into the surf culture. And he always been like, and no criticism at all, but he always been like, okay, this show is not like a Red Bull production, for example, or a World Surf League production. You know, the way you guys see surfing is one thing for the expert and all the aficionados on the planet and all that. But now we're looking at like a cinematic approach. So Chris always says like he wants to feel the wave from the
Hmm.
water or from the land. So he's usually looking for a tighter angle, you know, even more dramatic than what we should do. And that's super interesting because it's changing, you know, that
Interesting.
pushes like all of us, you know, to shoot a bit differently, you know, than what we would do, you know, usually. But I think it gives like a lot of texture to the show. You know? That's why 100 Way is so different than any sports documentary, but also really different than any surf documentary you can find online or anywhere.
And are you overcranking? Are you shooting higher frame rates or for your surf shots? Yeah.
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 Usually you're in movement because most of the time, whether you're swimming or you're on a jet ski, you're moving, you're shooting someone moving also in a moving environment, you know, so everything is going really fast. And that dramatic moment, usually it's 2 to 3 second max. So that's something if you want to show it on screen, usually if you can like overcrank it by 4 times, for example, shoot something close to 120 frames per second, or nowadays with the cameras we have like even more, we can go up like to 200 without losing any resolution or quality, you know, you're going to play with that. And then it comes to the editors, you know, depending on the edit and the structure, you know, to fasten it or to keep it at the speed. But when it's really dramatic, you want to see it in slow motion, obviously.
And when you're following the subjects on the day-to-day stuff, how are you trying to, I guess I have two questions. One, I know the story is going to be shaped in the edit a lot, but as you're shooting with your team, are you trying to shape the story in your head a little bit about what's going on that particular day? That would be one question. And then two, I'm assuming you've shot with these guys enough that you sort of have a shorthand when you got, multiple camera operators working a certain moment. I imagine there's kind of a dance where you're covering one thing, the other person's covering something else. And is there some sort of intuitive back and forth about who's going to cover what? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Definitely makes sense. So those surfers, those people we're following and all their relatives, you know, whether it's like their partners, wives or coach or whatever, you know, they're really driven by chasing the biggest wave on the planet. Something really helpful is waking up every day, you know, and checking the forecast, you know, the surf forecast, and but not looking where you are, but like everywhere in the world.
Oh,
Just
wow.
trying to figure out like, already trying to anticipate the mindset of the guy you're going to follow during the day. And to
Right.
be like, okay, so today we're in Portugal, but the waves are going to be in Hawaii. So maybe this guy is already thinking about traveling to Hawaii. And that's already like a way to start shaping the narrative. Then, of course, there's like everything which happened, before and everything which may happen because all along the season, we talk about like their goals, their mindset, what they want to achieve, etc., etc. So basically, Chris asks us to act, to have the perfect balance between being a fly on the wall and not interfere during like their daily activities, whatever they are, but also to be able like to interact with them to a point the viewer can understand what's happening. You can follow someone like an entire day, and if you don't ask the right question at the right moment, it's just a guy doing thing, like cooking kitchen, prepping some gourd, driving a car, checking the wave again. But if you manage to put the right question at the right moment, when your character is in the right mood, that's when it becomes interesting and narrative, and everything makes sense. Why this guy has been preparing his board for like I don't know. He's been doing that like every day on a single basis. Like why is it so important today? Why does it seem special? Why the forecast look like that good in Hawaii? And actually, you're not really interested about like the forecast in itself or even the wave in Hawaii, but more like the motivation of your character. Why he wants to go there, why he wants to achieve. And that can help you. Push back in terms of narrative and dig into like the real story of your character.
I'm also
So
curious. Well, I'm curious about something else. You've worked with a lot of really talented, athletes,
yeah,
and when you have someone that you're covering that's got a particular skill, say, whether it be surfing or skateboarding or anything else, how do you let that skill inform you in how you're going to cover that subject, if that makes sense?
I mean, I think it comes with experience, like literally, it's either like you're most of the time you're aware of that special skill, or particular skill, so that's something you always keep in mind. But sometimes you don't know, like especially in 100-foot wave when some surfers were just coming up like all over the seasons, like there's people we start like poorly following in season one and they're like really important nowadays in season three. You are actually like discovering those skills, and that's something like some of them, like you were not aware about that. You're like, wow, I had no idea that guy can do that. No, was he aware about it actually? Or is it just new? It's a long process. We started the show in for myself 2020, but like part of the team was there already in 2019. So imagine the evolution, so not only like your experience, tells you about how good people are, the skill they are, but it's also a matter of being open-minded and open-minded enough to discover new skills, and not just put people like in that case, oh, that guy is really good at doing that. That guy is really good at doing that. Or that guy is not even good in the water. It's just good like in front of the camera. Sometimes it's absolutely different, That guy who was so good in camera, but not really good in the water, one day he turned into like the next champion, And so you really have to adapt.
I'm curious if you can unpack what a day is like for you. And I know they're going to change depending on, what you're shooting that day, but you wake up in the morning, how do you get prepared? What's your first step, second step, third step to start the day?
So usually before going to bed, you make sure like all your camera is set up for the next morning. And as I said, like you need a bunch of batteries, bunch of media. You also need to be in touch with your collaborators over filmmaker and over cinematographer, from the team, because you want to be sure you're not going to interfere with them. So it's basically this guy is going to shoot with that team. This guy is going to shoot with that other surfer. This person is going to be in the water. This person is going to be on the cliff. And we almost have that military organization, to make sure everybody is at the right time and the right place. And to bounce back on your previous question, always happen, we always cross each over with the camera. So we created that level of priority, which says like, imagine there's a scene, someone is getting on a jet ski at the harbor. If you're the first person to arrive, you have the priority. So you can be the closest to the action using a 24 or a 35, and the other operator has to pull back using like a 35 millimeter lens or a 50 millimeter lens. And we try to get that, and most of the time it works. But of course, sometimes boom, we bump into each other, and we're shooting like the same lens, the same framing, and we have to quickly adapt. Luckily, everybody has their camera, synced, through time code. So that helps a lot the editors, to edit like a scene with multiple camera. But yeah, basically you wake up like a couple hours before daylight. You get your camera gear, you connect with your talent, you start following them basically when they're like out of the bed. Sometimes some of them we even have to wake them up, to be honest. And you hope for the best. You hope the waves are going to be really good. Um, while those guys are getting ready, you can already feel the intensity of the day. You can feel if it's going to be a special day or not. Either like they saw the wave or they heard about the wave, or they're like really like a lot of anticipation about the forecast that day. When it's a special day, you can feel it. That vibe, that special taste in the air, special smell in the air, which make the day already special. You get your set of questions ready just to make sure whatever happens, the narrative is covered, and those guys get in the water, and then once again, you're hoping for the best. You want some drama, but you want everybody to come back safe,
Sure.
on land, and you want people to perform. So you keep an eye on surfing the whole day, keep an eye on the action, on your framing, on the audio also, because we try to get audio in the water. That helps a lot, in the edit. And at the end of the day, you keep following those guys, try to get their input on what happened, their highs, their lows. Sometimes that's when like their relative, shows up. Can be like the wife, can be the partner, the dad, the coach, whatever. So you're also trying to get an input on that. And usually at nighttime, we regroup with the team. We make a proper breakdown of what happened, what we covered, what we missed, because sometimes it happens even with the best team ever, you're missing some content. And I'm doing my best to get in touch with Chris Smith, our director, in time, just to give him a quick heads up. Okay, this is where we are today. This is what we've done. I think we're good on that. I think we were like pretty average on that. You're going to be really happy with that. Give me a second chance to cover that. And he always like gives us like a really good input, like with really good like criticism. Where it's like, okay, so I really like that part of the story. Hey, you guys start to be like a bit repetitive, covering that. Maybe you should try to get another angle, on that character or the way he does. And basically, it's eat, sleep, repeat, and you do that for 6 months.
And are you offloading cards during the day or just at the end of the day?
Now during the day,
During the,
I
you're,
mean,
you're you're handing off to the
it
post crew?
it really depends where you are actually, because if your role that day is to be following someone outside of the water, you can like offload like a few cards during the day, or the ITs. When we're in Nazaré, Portugal, for example, or the IT is literally like driving around, with a car and picking up cards. But when you're in the water or in a boat, outside San Diego, like 100 miles outside San Diego, like there's no way you can upload your cards. So you're just like stocking card and stocking card and stocking card. And when you finally come back home, trust me, with like 4 or 5 terabytes, you give to your DIT to offload within a minute. She usually loves it. Yeah, but that's part of the game. Adaptation is always like when we get someone new in the crew, usually we have like really skilled people with experience, like brilliant cinematographers. But I always tell them like, um, adaptation is my priority. You need to be able like to adapt to whatever happens, whatever the circumstances are, like mistakes are going to happen, problems are going to happen. You just need to be able to adapt, because there's a lot of things you cannot anticipate in life, and in big wave surfing, it's even more.
Right, right. Well, Vincent, before we wrap up, how can people follow you and follow your career and what you're up to? Do you have a social media site or is there a place people can see what you're up to?
That's a really good question, actually. I have I actually have a website, and I think it's pretty updated at the moment. So that will be like the best input, and it's my first name and last name .com. And I'm having like pretty much everyone, like an Instagram account. I'm not really posting anything on it, but who knows, it may
Hey,
start happening at some point.
you probably don't have time.
Yeah, probably, I'm probably just too lazy to post on Instagram. But yeah, same thing. It's my first name and last name, and yeah, I've been using like a bunch of social like that, like X and LinkedIn also. And so yeah, just type my first and last name, and you should be able to follow me somewhere.
Well, very good. Well, Vincent, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. Best of luck with all the things you're working on, and hang tight. Don't hang up. I want to chat with you just for a second, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jeff, and thanks for handling my French accent. I know it's not easy.
You take care, man.
Thank you for listening to the Filmmaker Mixer podcast, a podcast created and hosted by filmmakers Jeff Stolen and Andrew Lamping, and produced by Melody Lopez.
Our theme song was composed by Stephen D. Bennett.
Make sure to follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us on, and stay tuned for future episodes.